Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, two men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name is Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the space help deliver you with value. And on this episode, we're joined by Ethan Liu, author of Once a Bitcoin Miner, Scandal and Turmoil in the Cryptocurrency Wild West. In 2019, Ethan attended a blockchain conference in North Korea along with only 7 other foreign attendees, one of whom was Virgil Griffith of Ethereum Foundation, who was arrested for alleged conspiracy in late 2019. In his book, Ethan gives a deep dive into his own crypto journey and how it's intersected with the likes of Virgil Griffith, Anthony Iorio, and Gerald Cotten. Ethan, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're stoked to have a fellow Canadian or fellow member living in Canada here to join us. And I want to jump into the first paragraph in chapter 1 of your book, and it explains how you grew up in Western Germany, supported by your father's modest income. And you paint a bit of a picture of frustration over a lack of, you talk about hand-me-downs being too big for you, and it's clear that money was a bit of a challenge for your family growing up. My question is, do you think you would have paid attention to Bitcoin as closely and as early as you did if your upbringing looked different than it was?
Probably no, but I don't think my upbringing could have been different from what it was. And I don't just mean my specific circumstances, but also the circumstances of my generation as a whole. We all grew up, became adults in the shadow of the 2008 financial crisis, and we have all been affected by that one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. And in the book, it explains that you discovered Bitcoin early on through the dark web. Now, for our audience, for those who aren't familiar, can you explain what the dark web is, why you were using it, and what your initial impression of Bitcoin was?
So the dark web, it's a portion of the internet that's not readily accessible by everyday people. It's not really locked away. Anyone can download a browser to use it. It doesn't cost anything. And there are also lots of legitimate uses for the dark web. And, like Facebook has a dark web version of Facebook.
So it's not just criminals and...
Yeah, but it's definitely more well-known for the darker use cases. So
right.
People used to sell all sorts of things on the dark web, lots of drugs and lots of weapons. At one time, there was an alleged sex slave on sale. And I think that might have been fake because there are also lots of dark web scams, as I actually encountered one. I tried to buy LSD and then I paid, which wasn't a lot of money at the time. It was, I think, only $100, but that was 0.4 Bitcoins. And that's lost forever.
Yeah.
But anyway, in the beginning, my friends and I were curious about the dark web, so we were on it, and that's when I discovered, when I first heard about Bitcoin. So it was like 2012, 2013, and I did feel that there was some sort of value there, because why do the dark web people use Bitcoin? It's because it's person to person, and there's no like central administrator there for the government to attack. Like they can't freeze your funds, and you may not agree with that specific use case, but you can clearly see that there is some sort of value to that when applied elsewhere.
That said, beyond using it to buy some LSD, were you, did you wrap your mind around why Bitcoin might be valuable? Like, did you look at it as, hey, this is something maybe I'm interested in beyond the needs for it for this particular purpose right now? Or did you not really get into that side of like Bitcoin until later on?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of both. I think I saw a little bit of the wider value, but not to a huge degree.
Right.
And, maybe I saw it to like a 3 or a 4, but I think eventually I got to a 10, but that definitely took a while. I think from when I first heard about Bitcoin to first buying Bitcoin, I think that was a whole year for me. And
Right.
I don't think that's exceptional. I think lots of people, it takes them a while.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think even just relating to my own experiences, this guy introduced me to crypto, and it was the same thing where I've thanked him. Yeah. But he was telling me about it and how he had been buying it. And there's this, I feel like there's often a barrier for people that you kind of need to start feeling comfortable enough with even the concept before you kind of jump in and maybe buy some. At least I think that tends to be how it goes. So I agree. It's not a unique case totally.
Yeah, 100%. So this episode is set to release on October 18th, Monday, October 18th. On October 19th, your book comes out, which I mentioned in the bio. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what Once a Bitcoin Miner is all about, if they want to check it out?
Mm-hmm. So it's an epic quest through the cryptocurrency Wild West, which follows, I want to say early investor, but I know the term is subjective. What is early? There are lots of people more OG than me, but I got in around 2013 and follows my adventures through this space. And it's meant to read like a novel. So I'm a journalist. I have a column in the Financial Post. So I try to write it in a way that's driven by plot and character, because I feel that I think crypto, lots of people look at it from the perspective of purely from the perspective of like computer science or monetary policy. But I think you strip away all of that. At the heart of that, there is this aspect of the human condition that's associated with that. And I think that's not explored enough. And that's what I try to do through the book, to tell the story of crypto through the human condition.
And like, just based on the title alone, is it a series of your own stories of the scandal part of it? Is that things that you personally experienced, or are you telling tales of just general stories that are noteworthy, within Bitcoin's journey?
It's a little bit of both. And when I tell stories that are noteworthy, they are also stories that touch upon my life. There are stories in which I walk through, for example, the North Korea episode. That was actually quite a shock. That wasn't supposed to be in the book. I went to North Korea thinking that I did not expect that event to make any news at all. But yeah, as all of us know, it just spiraled out of control.
Mm-hmm. At what point did you know you were going to start writing this book? Like, I mean, was it right away in 2013, 2014, where you're like, there's some crazy things happening here? And with your writing background, your journalism background, you were kind of always thinking the long game that you'd write a book about this? Or was it later on where you're like collecting all of these memories where you're like, maybe I should put pen to paper here?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I think it's like writing a book is like how I got into crypto. Like I first, heard of Bitcoin 2012, 2013. Took me like a whole year to actually do it, actually invest. And so I had the idea of writing a book, like the vague idea of it, in 2014. But, I didn't really do anything to try to accomplish that. So the deal for the book that was signed early 2019. And I started making a proposal in 2018. But yeah, so it's kind of like that, a bit of a process.
During your first journalism stint in St. John, you interviewed Anthony Iorio. How did that conversation with Anthony have an impact on you and your outlook on cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and everything like that?
So 2013, that was my first conversation, I think, with someone who knew what they were talking about with respect to crypto. and we had quite a wide-ranging discussion. And I think Anthony Iorio, he saw a lot more wider uses and more bigger ideas beyond simply the price. And this was pre-Ethereum, but at the time I don't think I knew much, and the only thing I understood was number go up, and Anthony actually made a price prediction, and lots of people don't like doing that because they end up on the wrong side of history. But that price prediction that he made, it turned out to be correct. And toward the end of 2013, that was when I first bought crypto, Bitcoin. And yeah, I don't even think there were many other different coins back then. But right after I bought, it was at 1,000, and it basically fell to like 500 within a month. Yeah.
Wow.
And at the time I was thinking like, well, what the hell did I get myself into?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Goodbye.
So one of the other personalities or individuals who is pretty common or pretty well known in the space that you mentioned early in the book is Gerald Cotten, the founder or co-founder of QuadrigaCX. And as we know, or for those who have paid attention to the story, that was a very interesting and tragic, but also controversial potentially thing with Quadriga and with Gerald allegedly dying in India. Some people don't believe he actually died. There's been whole podcasts about this controversy and that kind of thing. From someone who actually met Gerald in those early days, what was he like, and what do you make of the whole Quadriga story?
Well, he definitely appeared to be someone who was running a clean shop. I can tell you that I did not have any suspicion of all that we have heard since, that he has been taking users' money and using it to gamble on his own personal risky trades, and about how shady Quadriga was in general, and how he had been running scams when he was a teenager. So at the time, I actually thought he was pretty inspiring. He was kind of all in crypto. At the time, I was writing this thing about people taking salaries in crypto, and he was quite enthusiastic about being the first few people to raise the hand when I asked the question. I was like, "Yeah, I make all my money in crypto." I just totally did not expect what happened, and I know there are doubts as to whether he really died. And at one point, there was this guy from Russia who was trying to sell me what he said was proof that Gerald Cotten did not die, and it might have been a scam. But there is quite a lot of intrigue and suspicion in this case.
What do you think?
Oh, I have no idea. So I did hear though that there is going to be a book out by his widow,
Jennifer Robertson.
Yeah, and it's a ghost written book. So the publisher signed on like a professional writer to write it with her, and that guy's pretty legit. So I think if he didn't actually die, it'll be quite a lot of egg on the guy's face. And it's HarperCollins. It's like a legitimate publisher, so that adds credence to the, I guess, the idea that he did actually die. But I don't know for certain. What do you guys think?
Well, I had some funds in Quadriga, so that part of me was frustrated. I actually remember it was interesting, and you allude to this in your book at one point, but withdrawals through CIBC at one point, one of our banks in Canada, were delayed while they were looking into some of the things. And I was part of that. I remember typically it was like a 48-hour withdrawal, and I was waiting like 35 days. And I had taken a significant, very significant at the time for myself, chunk of that out, and it was coming into my Canadian bank account. So those were a nervous 35 days as I waited, but that was my personal experience with it. But it's like you said, I mean, I never met Gerald, anything along those lines, so it's all speculation. But some of the things in the past that you hear, especially through, there was a podcast by CBC called Death in Crypto Land, and they interview some people who remember Gerald and talking about how he was going to, run these scams and that kind of thing. So it's a little bit suspect for sure, but tough to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had money on Quadriga as well. So at the time, it wasn't worth a lot. It was just like worth 2,000. So I think you had fiat on it, right? So I had crypto. Mine were like 13 ethers,
which is a good chunk of change today.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly. In general, though, going, whether it was meeting Anthony, whether it was meeting Gerald, those were done at these meetups. How essential were those in the early days of having these kind of in-person gatherings where you could just talk about what was happening with the technology?
I think that is absolutely essential, because I have always thought about this, that without the internet, and I know without the internet, you can't send Bitcoin, but if Bitcoin can function without the internet, it would not have taken off without the internet, because of it. These communities wouldn't form. Because I have many crypto friends, but I have very few friends that I knew before crypto that are actually into crypto. So like 90% of my crypto friends, I knew them through crypto, through our common interests. And without the internet, we would not have met.
And what did these meetups look like? Like, I mean, I'm somebody who never really attended in-person meetups. They weren't something I was aware of. I think Kelowna had some, where Alf and I are based, had some meetups at one point. I don't think currently there are any well-known ones, but like, what do you expect? Like, do you show up and is there an agenda, or is it just casual, like having some beers and chatting about what's happening with Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's very casual. I think most have no agendas, and some of them are very weird. There was this there was this one meetup I went to in Calgary. So I moved to a new city. I was trying to find people who were into crypto. So I went to this meetup, and it was advertised as a Bitcoin workshop. It's called Workshop. And I saw this sign advertising this thing called iPro. And at the time, I didn't know what it was, but I Googled it. It's people linked it to OneCoin. It's like a MLM kind of thing. And I don't know what came over me. I sat through like the whole morning of it. And people were quoting like Bible verses, their presenters. Like the guy was saying, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. Yeah, like that left a very sour taste in my mouth. And toward the end of 2019, iPro was sued by the SEC.
Yeah, I don't think it matters if it's in the land of crypto or not. MLM scams are MLM scams. So
yeah, no kidding, no kidding. Yeah. So one of the big things I want to chat to you about, Ethan, is your trip to North Korea. You mentioned that barely made it in the book, but that has turned into such an interesting, and I mean, reading that excerpt from the book, it's just, it's such a crazy experience, or it certainly reads that way. And so I guess the first question before we get into Virgil Griffith is, what led you to make that trip, to travel to North Korea? What inspired you to attend that particular conference?
So there are basically two reasons. One is a personal interest, and two, I think more relevant to this, is that we have all been reading a lot about what North Korea has been up to with crypto. It's accused of doing lots of shady stuff. And when North Korea announced the conference, I thought this was an opportunity to see for myself. I thought I'd be able to like listen to presentations by North Korean crypto people. I wanted to see and understand what they were trying to do. Of course, it turned out to be the exact opposite of what I expected.
How so, for those who maybe haven't read the article or that excerpt?
So it turns out the conference wasn't for people to like receive information from the North Koreans. They expected us to present to them. And I think some of the foreign attendees, there were 8 of us, and some of us they went in knowing that they were going to be presenters, like only 1 or 2 of them. Most of us we were we thought we were participants. We go there, but in fact we were told, hey, you are the conference. And lots of people just made up stuff on the spot.
As I understand it, you actually declined basically their offer to be a presenter, which came out of nowhere for you. So what was that? What was that like to be put on the spot and say, okay, we want you to speak now, and then you choose not to? Were you now sitting there in an audience and watching who you thought were other people just coming to attend the conference? Now they're speaking. That must have been an awkward situation.
Yeah. Well, so even though I didn't speak, they didn't put me in the audience. All the foreigners were still put together. So how the conference was structured was that imagine like a really big conference room, and in the center was this table, and when the conference began, everyone would be already in the room, and when it starts, they would lead us in, and everybody would watch us come in, and then we would sit around that table in the center. Yeah, but I think at the time I did think that perhaps presenting about crypto to North Koreans, it's not that good an idea. But I definitely didn't feel it to a very strong degree. It wasn't a very like firm and emphatic no when I declined the thing. It was more of a case where I had some doubts and I asked quite a lot of questions, and I think the organizers were of the view that, if you don't want to present it, it's totally fine.
Ulf, do you realize our audience has been either watching or listening to this episode for 20 minutes?
20 minutes? No, they should probably subscribe.
Yeah, they should subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment and turn on notifications. And if you're listening to this podcast, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review.
We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. So go check out the episode description. You can find all that information below. And we have an update on the NFT, don't we?
That's right. We didn't previously mention this, but this NFT for OG supporter is a one of one. There will only be one of this kind ever minted, and we have a few surprises for the person who purchases it. The link is in the episode description.
And back to the episode. And what can you, for our audience who hasn't read this, that there is some, there's news on this that's available already, but the whole story with Virgil Griffith, can you break that down? What has happened that's now all public knowledge, and just share that story? Because you were very much a part of it. You were there for everything that happened.
Virgil, I think he's quite unique among the participants because he's an American. And Americans, they can't go to North Korea without explicit permission, because there was a case of a young man. He went there and he allegedly stole a poster or something, and he got detained by North Korea, and ultimately he died upon return. So the US just banned everyone from going to North Korea. And so Virgil, he sought permission from the State Department, and they denied him, and he was like, I'm going to go anyway. I guess that's how his trouble started, because right as he was going, his government knew that he was going. And I think even though there was this ban, North Korea, despite how cloistered it is, it's still open up to tourists. And I think lots of Americans probably just go there all the time. And the government closes an eye and opens an eye. But for Virgil, I think they thought it was an extra big deal because again, unique among all the 8 participants. I don't think any of us were like real big shots in crypto, but he was, head of special projects at the Ethereum Foundation. And I think they paid extra attention to him as a result. And North Korea, ultimately, this is to the US government, this is a national security case.
And so Virgil goes, he joins with you. There's the 8 of you as foreigners. You come in and you've now been asked to speak at this conference. And so Virgil, he does present in some way, shape, or form. He does some sort of presentation. And what was the outcome of that from that point forward?
Yeah. I should say that Virgil, there's report in, I think I read in Decrypt that someone talked to someone who knew Virgil, and before going to North Korea, he was telling everyone he was going to give a keynote. So it's likely that Virgil knew he was going to speak when he went in.
I see. Okay.
And yeah, but anyway, even in North Korea, he was telling us that he was going to meet with the State Department officials when he gets back to tell them about the trip. And Virgil, he's a very interesting guy. I think he's extremely smart, and he's very open, very curious. And I don't think he expected that when the State Department officials wanted to talk to him, that they were possibly going to refer the case to the Justice Department or something. I don't think he realized that the Justice Department was after him until it was too late.
Like he was naive to just how serious they were taking it. In his eyes, maybe it was all going to be okay, and he was going to explain himself and would have no more worries thereafter. But that's clearly not what happened. Can you explain now kind of what's happened recently as an outcome of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess before I do that, I do want to address what you said, which is a very good point, that I don't think he suspected anything, because the defense says that what was presented at the conference is just publicly available information. And, having been there, I tend to agree. It was just stuff that you can read on Wikipedia.
Right.
But ultimately, to the government, it doesn't matter. The prosecution has said that, so what if it's publicly available? If you can have an engineering textbook and the information in there is publicly available, but maybe the student doesn't understand it, and if the professor elucidates that for the student, the professor has done the student a service. So that's what the prosecution's saying. And ultimately, the charge against Virgil is that he had the intent of helping North Korea, and he acted on the intent. So whether he actually achieved any tangible benefit for North Korea, that's kind of immaterial. And so with respect to the latest developments, it's 6.5 years, up to 6.5 years in a plea deal, which was very unexpected. Wow. Ultimately, the judge isn't bound by the 6.5 years. So he's going to be sentenced next year in January, and could be anything.
Have you spoken to Virgil since the North Korea trip, or was it just that kind of intersection where you were both at that conference, or do you guys keep in communication?
So I didn't know Virgil before the trip, and we didn't keep much in communication, other than one instance when he reached out to me and very proactively returned $100 that I lent him, which I thought was very cool of him. I think you can infer a lot about a man by how they deal with their debts. Mm-hmm. But afterward, I did speak to his lawyers, and I had said, if this goes to trial, I'm happy to testify. And I think a whole bunch of other people from the trip, they did the same. But I have not spoken to Virgil himself.
So I want to go back to you making the decision to attend this, and you mentioned that you've had that kind of inner curiosity of North Korea in general and wanting to travel there for that. But did you have any fear in your mind? Like you mentioned, you decided, okay, it's maybe not the best idea to present here, but did you fear at all even attending the conference could be construed somehow negatively, or was that not on your radar as a concern?
It's something I thought about, but I wouldn't say it's something that I was afraid of, because people go to North Korea all the time. There are tourism agencies, and I have in fact had this on my bucket list for quite a while. And there was 2014, I plan on going for the Pyongyang marathon. So North Korea actually has a marathon every year, and I actually trained for the marathon. I thought I was going to go for it, but then they banned foreigners because of Ebola. So this was something that I thought of doing for a while.
Right. And then, so once you're there, you mentioned that sometimes there's this preconceived notion that North Korea is incredibly advanced when it comes to, or that they're honing in on cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. And then your actual experience wasn't that at all. And you kind of question in your book, was that on purpose, that facade, or was that actually the reality, and everyone's thoughts of how the country is misguided? Can you kind of explain in depth how those contrasted together?
Yeah. First, I want to say it doesn't necessarily have to be either or. It could be both. So it was definitely very backwards by our standards. The electricity, it went out several times. And at my hotel, which is supposed to be a very good hotel, and the conference was only 2 days, and they took us around. I think the whole thing was basically a glorified tourism trip. So they took us to their teachers' college, and I could see that they were using an unactivated version of Windows. And they took us to their factories, and they flaunted at length just completely unspectacular technology. And I remember they showed us this 3D film, and nice in 3D, but it wasn't very spectacular. And I don't know why they were so proud of it. And there was this arcade game. There were no levels, no objectives, you had a gun and you just shot cows. I don't know what the point of that was.
They stopped you at these things. It was like, hey, here's an activity to do. Go try this cool arcade game we've built.
Oh, yeah. Well, to be fair to them, they had a whole bunch of other arcade games there. I'm probably describing the worst.
Maybe you got the worst one. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I talked to our North Korean minders, and they were like, oh, we don't know anything about Bitcoin and crypto. Everyone outside is just lying about North Korea, which probably is not true. But I don't doubt that I was shown like a very small and carefully curated part of the country.
Interesting.
One of the great advantages for Ulf and I about talking to someone like yourself who's been in the space for such a long time, I think 2013 is definitely OG territory. We can safely say that. But what do you make of just in general, from where you've seen Bitcoin to how the space has evolved up until now?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's definitely changed a lot, and I would first come at it from the perspective of someone in the media. And I remember when I first wrote about Bitcoin, 2013, I had to write this long explainer about what the hell Bitcoin is, and throughout the years, and if you look at news stories from around that time, everyone huge long explainer, what is Bitcoin, what is blockchain, but you see that explanation getting smaller and smaller as it progresses. And now, when you write a news story, you can just introduce Bitcoin just like that, because it's established as a thing. And it's, that's a symbol of something, that Bitcoin is becoming increasingly, and crypto, the whole space in general, is becoming increasingly mainstream.
One of the things I wanted to ask, because we've talked a lot about your trip to North Korea. We've talked a lot about sort of the story behind that, a little bit about Quadriga, just at least at a high level. As far as interest for your book goes, for anyone who's listening, are there any sort of highlights or other stories that you can give us just a brief touch on as maybe a little teaser for why we might want to read in and get a little deeper into the stories you have to share?
There is this other story that is an excerpt of it is going to come out in the Financial Post in Canada soon. It's about a case currently before the ASC, which is the Alberta Securities Commission. And so it's set within this little, I guess maybe by American standards is a little town, but it's a very big city in Canada. It's Calgary, 1 million people, but it's set there. And it basically revolves around this, the local crypto scene. And it's about this thing called a whale club. There was a investment fund started there, and it rose quite rapidly against the 2017 Bitcoin boom. There was a lot of hype, a lot of activity. There was so much hope, but ultimately everything kind of ends in ruin. And that's one of the stories I depict, and it's set against the larger context, I think, of looking at this in the lens of the human condition. And I think lots of people look at it as something, as either you purely look at it in the technical lens, you look at it from the computer science perspective, or you look at Bitcoin and crypto through the monetary policy perspective. But this is a book that is driven by character and plot, and I try to look at it from the human condition perspective.
When we look towards the future now, you got into this when it was basically just Bitcoin on the scene. Now there's all these other cryptocurrencies, there's NFTs, DeFi. What do you think the future is for cryptocurrency in general? Or what are you most excited about?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are also lots of things I'm not excited about. Maybe I should talk about that.
Maybe talk about that.
Start with that.
Yeah, I think when you look at what's happening in the US, regulators are getting increasingly hawkish. And I don't think it's a specific target on crypto. It's not a specific crosshair painted on the backs of the crypto people, but I think it reflects the wider priorities of the current administration. And I think it's something that's going to continue. We are going to see more of this, with Coinbase's disputes with the regulators and the whole Tether settlement. And I think we're going to see the regulators put more of their power into dealing with crypto. And I think, they say for any action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I think DeFi is something that's going to take off in a bigger way than now. I think one example I would point to is when Shapeshift said it's going to dissolve its corporate structure and become a DAO, and with the specific aim of trying to thwart regulators. And whether how successful it will be, that remains to be seen. But I think we'll see more of that.
Awesome. Well, Ethan, this has been such a good conversation. We're really excited to read the full. I've read part of your book. I can't wait to finish it, read the whole thing. But we like to end every episode of Show Me the Crypto with the same 3 questions for every guest. It's a little segment we call You Had Me at Crypto. Alf's going to ask you those questions.
All right, Ethan. So the first question here, who is your favorite person to follow in the crypto space?
I follow Niraj Agrawal. I think Coin Center guy. Yeah, he's funny as hell. He makes me laugh.
Nice.
Awesome.
All right, second question. What will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now?
Well, I think you've given me a far enough horizon that I can safely say it'll be $1 million or more. But I should say that when Bitcoin reaches $1 million, it's not going to be all because of Bitcoin's appreciation. A large part of it will be the depreciation of the dollar.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah. We get so many answers to that question where around million is kind of the number. And I'm so curious where we'll be. Technically, we've got some that are already a year into this 10-year prediction. So we'll see where we're at the time. But all right. So the third question here, what is the most underrated coin or project in all of crypto?
Well, I want to say... Well, the name of it is actually escaping me. And I think that speaks to how underrated it is.
Fair.
There you go. What's the general project about, kind of thing?
So this is. I want to preface this by saying that I don't know that much about the coin, but I only know the gist of what I heard, and the basic idea appealed to me. But how it's actually applied, I can't speak to that. So I think when you make a transaction, you're actually mining two other transactions. So the basic idea is that this coin, it's efficient, but again, I'm not sure how well it operates in practice.
Right. Well, the concept sounds interesting to say the least.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's like at the tip of my tongue. I'm very embarrassed. I forgot the name.
No, it's all
It
good.
happens to everyone. Trust me, I've dealt with that so many times. So don't even worry about it.
Well, the good news for our audience is that your book, Once a Bitcoin Miner, comes out Tuesday, October 19th. Quick question, where can they find it? Is it going to be Amazon, or is it in bookstores, or where's the best place?
Well, it can be found wherever you buy your books, but I always say this: if you hate Amazon, you can try your local independent bookstore, because I don't hate Amazon with a 10, but maybe I hate it with a 5 or a 6. So I'm still okay shopping on Amazon, but if you don't like Amazon, try a local bookstore.
There we go. Love it. Support the local. Thank you so much, Ethan, for joining Ulf and I on this episode of Show Me the Crypto.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe as well as rate and review this podcast.